Who were some of your big inspirations with impressionists and all that when you were starting off?
I love. You know what's funny is I didn't really probably Jamie Foxx. I mean, because I really liked guys like Jamie Foxx, Jim Carrey, Robin Williams. I like people that did both. Like I really love stand up. But I make my living for the most part as an actor.
Right.
Even though I've been on the road now all month, and I'm going to be on the road all next month, and most of April, and it's like that's every weekend I'm on the road, and I love it so much. But I really truly love those three guys where they were able to do both. That it wasn't because back in the '80s, it was like a lot of guys would do like Christopher Walken and that was enough, and people were like, "Whoa, that was Christopher Walken," and they used to do the thing where they would turn around and then come back and they'd be like, wow, it's him. And I think, which I think is fun and kitschy, but sort of the moment, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that can't be brought back by a different generation, but it just feels a little, maybe not as personal and connected. And so I really like those guys. I really liked, but I do like, I like the Impressionists a lot. I always thought that was really fun. I like Phil Hartman, Daryl Hammond.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy.
Do you feel that the comedy supports the acting and the acting supports the comedy? Like, is there a great symbiosis there? Or?
I mean, it's like a marriage, right? It's like who's ever out of work, like supports the other one. I mean, in the best way, they're both working at the same time. Like I'm doing the cool thing about doing stand up is I'm doing a lot of animation now at the same time.
Oh hell yeah!
And so that's really fun because they asked me for something this morning and they were like, okay, when can you come and do this? And I was like, well, I'm in town these days, and that's really great because animation is much more malleable because they'll be like, oh, we have a 2-week window. When can you come in to do this? And but if it's like, oh, you booked this movie. Then it becomes like first priority. It's got to be in first position.
Yeah.
Not to say that stand-up is important, but there's something like, oh, maybe hopefully I can move. I never mean disrespect by that because I understand. I really appreciate and respect the art form I put in 12 years. I was somebody who did not want to be somebody who just came on the scene and was just like, yo, man, I'm a stand-up now. I really worked and sort of, I think, put in my time. I probably could have put in more, but I try to put in as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like you love both, and they're both similar enough where they don't like obviously contradict each other.
Well, one I get to say somebody else's lines, and one I get to say my own.
Oh, that's a cool way to put it.
So that's why I did it. When I was on Two Broke Girls, we after the first season, we couldn't take because the show was guaranteed to come back, right? So I had a summer off with nothing to do. Now I could have traveled, I could have seen my family, but at that time, stand up it was big. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't as big as it is now because of YouTube, because of social media, because of streaming platforms, and so. It was just one of those things where I was like with buddies and I was like, hey, they were like, why don't you just try to do stand up? And so that summer I just worked my ass off just trying to be a stand up because I'd always wanted to do it, but I truly never wanted to be somebody who just showed up because they would have given me spots, I think sometimes because I was on TV, which is a good and a bad thing, I guess, but I wanted to earn that spot. I didn't want it to be something, and that was very important to me. That was my pride, but also like to respect the other people around me and friends in it.
And I don't know because I'm not in comedy, but I have a massive respect for it. Is that like almost like a rite of passage when it comes to comedy? Like I feel people talk about it so proudly when it comes to like I did that crappy show that got paid I got one beer for the show for this time that I was there all the time, but they were in like the lowest of the low places, working their way up to the bigger spots, right? Like,
yes. It is a rite of passage, and the thing about stand-up is, it's truly the most remarkable art form. I mean, I know it's not an art, people say it's art form, but whatever it is, it's remarkable. It's you on a stage, essentially with a microphone. People have paid to see you, and what they have paid for is you making them laugh. So that's the exchange, right? Yeah. So it's like that is a crazy currency.
Yeah.
To pay for jokes.
Right.
And here's the thing. Yes, comedy is subjective, but there's like horror movies and comedies. Everything else is a drama. It's like for essentially horror movies are telling you we're gonna scare you. Yeah. You're gonna feel fear.
Yeah.
Something will happen. I'm not saying you're gonna jump, but something will change in your internally. And same with comedy. Right. That something will happen. And so the other stuff is sort of lumped in for me, but I think to get there and say, hey, for an hour I'm going to make you laugh, I think that's a pretty special thing, and to be able to do that and just to give the audience what they paid for.
Hell yeah. Yeah, that bond with the audience, right? That transaction, that promise.
I feel like it's funny because I'm an actor, right? But I can't. You put 200 people in a room, 1,000. I don't care. You put 3 cameras on me and you give me my lines. I'm good.
Yeah,
all right,
yeah.
I can perform all day. If I had to go up on stage and you give me a camera and you tell me I got to try to make people laugh with my own, there's no way. I can't.
Well, here's the thing: you never know if you can until you do it. It's
That's
like
true.
learning karate from a book, right?
I could figure it out, but I have no desire to go out there and do that.
No, for sure. You have to fail in order to succeed. Like, right? Yeah. Like it's like Daniel San could not have beaten Cobra Kai from a book.
Right.
He could do it with Mr. Miyagi and getting in fights.
Yeah.
And so the same thing with comedy is you got to get knocked out. Because you don't, I mean, I think about bombs that I've had where I'm just like, wow. And listen, I think you do learn more from bombing, but holy hell, you never forget. I mean, it's weird. I never remember crushing. Like, I'm sure I crush or have crush or whatever, but those don't really stick with me is the times. And it's not the failure that sticks with me. It's not like me sort of like admonishing myself, but it's the idea of like, why didn't that work? I don't ask why it worked when it worked, because you write all day to work for it to work.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that element then, because I love problem solving, and that's one of the reasons I love producing. I love film in general, is because there's so many things you have to figure out all the time. And directing, for example, you got to figure out on the spot, right?
Yeah.
So I do like it from that element. Now that you mention it, but yeah,
and to figure out on the fly, in the middle when things aren't going, like there's I'm doing a bunch of jokes about being Jewish right now, and I do think in certain markets, people hear the word Jewish and they hear the word Israel as the same thing,
right?
So they're not on board with it. Now, maybe, and I'm assuming, I don't know. There's a million reasons why people. Maybe the joke isn't funny. Maybe I suck. But it's like it's one of those things where I feel people tighten, and I'm almost trying to write a joke about how Israel and being Jewish are not the same thing, to sort of give them permission to laugh, because I joke. I have a joke about Palestine, but I have a lot of jokes about being Jewish and sort of the stereotypes that we have carried with us through history. But it's never enough because of what is happening in Israel, at least right now in this climate. And so that's the other thing. It's all about timing. Like, does your stuff work right now?
Yeah.
And if something happens in the current climate, like when I've been doing Trump for 15 years, right? And then it was really fun. And then the moment he got elected, people were like, at least here, I can't, I will tell you, I did Texas like this weekend, and they were a blast. I mean, I love doing Texas, but it was people in LA specifically were just like, no, we don't, it's too real now. And so it didn't matter that it was the same jokes, by the way. I wasn't doing different jokes, and they weren't even political jokes.
See, that's really interesting to me.
But it was just the temperature changed in the room.
Because, like, obviously the guy was popular. He was a reality TV star. We all knew who he was.
My buddy said he didn't vote for himself.
Yeah, and men don't change after they're like 40 or 50. Like, they just don't. And like, he hasn't necessarily changed at all.
No, it's just his job title changed.
Right. And like, just very, very divisive.
It's weird. And so it's like, I went away from political, and then it was like, and I didn't want to be hacked. That's the thing about the impressions, right? I never, especially with Trump, I didn't want to get up there and just do things that you would agree with. Like, it's like, if he's just like, I'm such an idiot, so stupid, right. Then people kind of go, yay, or they go, boo, right? Because you're not really, there's no thought in it. There's no story. There's no point of view.
Yeah.
And so, and it's hard. I'm trying to challenge myself. Like, I'm trying to write a bit about autism right now, and I'm not autistic, at least I don't think so. And trying to figure that out, but have a point of view where people are not like, because I'll tell you, one of my great friends who opens for me all the time, he does a bit on Down syndrome, and he doesn't have Down syndrome, but he likes watching it online. Like the kids, there's a bunch of guys that have like channels and shit. It's fun. It's like, we were talking about Love on the Spectrum. Like, I love watching that. I cry every time. And he was saying how much he loves these guys. And when we were in Virginia, this woman walked out of the show. And she was just like, you can't make fun of those people. And he was like, and I've heard him do the joke 100 times. He did it in Fort Worth this past weekend, 4 sold out shows, not a single person left. Like, it didn't matter. And he was hosting. So he's the first person that they see. And he was talking about it. And holy hell, was it funny? And this woman just was like, grabbed her things and was like, no, I'm out of here. And you go, so, you know, maybe it's the individual, but people are just, they're on edge about so many things. They hear Down syndrome, you must be making fun of those people instead of like, awarding them or applauding them, excuse me.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to drop a like if you enjoyed the video.
And subscribe and hit the bell for a whole lot more to come.